transition, if there needs to be one, we don't know. So, if you have any comments or any thoughts, otherwise I'll just continue.
I would just like you to reflect a bit on now. You said that you were an exception in your field at that time, and I am very interested in this kind of thing where certain people begin for some unknown reason to kind of think differently. What I would like to hear from you is how your environment received that different kind of position you were taking, and how that reception or that response, how that interacted with what was going on in your mind. Did it help? Did it hinder? What happened?
So, I mean, I understand your question to be something along the lines of what made me change? What are the environmental factors that made me change? Or is it that how did the environment around me take what I was trying to say?
How did the environment around you respond to you, and then what was the impact of that response on you? Did it influence the way you went forward?
And I will go into this because I think that's common to many of us and something that we grapple with, which is in the case of knowledge systems. I mean, we all have, it's very easy for us growing up here to see that there are multiple knowledge systems, right, on everything from medicine to music to even learning itself and modes of learning, and to see that there are alternatives, or you have multiple religions. It automatically makes a child a little more, you take a different approach when you see that there are adults who seem to be respected, who have different approaches to the same questions. It makes you start thinking. So in thinking about engineering, there are 3 or 4 strands of thinking. One is I was educated at Piradine, which essentially grew up out of a certain mode of the British educational system. Basically, engineering was an attempt to create people who are as competent as people who are getting out of the University of London, so that you could get the charter, right? So you could be recognized as a proper engineer. What that meant is, what is okay in say Sri Lanka or Ceylon or whatever is not the same as what is okay in Britain. So there was always a dissonance between the course that we were going through and still are going through in the engineering faculty at Perumal. And I guess that I was beginning to see that a lot more than others, because I think even at an early age, I think I had my issues with the way, I could see, knowledge coming in 2 or 3 different ways. My own great-grandfather was a Unani physician, practicing somewhere in Kadugana, doing things for free. And when he died, I know all his older leaves and all of that just got lost. People didn't appreciate it, and they were thrown out. So, but then the idea that you practice medicine, and your only thing you get out of that is betel leaves and some gratitude, is a very different way of doing things. And when you would be the experience and the sort of norms and values that medical education at the other university, except even Peradine, it puts into you, right? So that was one of the issues. But for us also, it was not just the fact that we were actually going through an educational system which was set up for a particular time in England, in a particular place, with a particular ideology, and we were trying to replicate that in a sort of unthinking way. So that was one part of the what I was acutely conscious of. And for me, it was for me, sort of stripping this down was a political act. But I thought it was powerful to just strip it down and name it and begin to use that to illustrate some problems. And like, for example, one thing that I was fond of saying is that the majority of homes in Sri Lanka are mud-based. They're based with use dry mud and wood, wattle and dog, right? Various names are there for it. But out of the more than 80,000 or somewhere between 30 and 80,000 volumes of books in our engineering faculty library, there was only one on mud construction. We were not capable of thinking about, learning from, what was happening around us. And that also was written by somebody in England who, because there was a difficulty in getting cement in between the two walls, so there was somebody who took on mud construction. And so this idea of engineers serving power makes this particularly important, and the fact that unlike agriculturalists or medical doctors whose the implications of their work is visible very soon if you don't treat the patient in an appropriate way for a psychologist, and you can see the implications. Engineers can go on because you create some type of an artificial world and you can use it in a cocoon for a while. So it takes a longer while to strip down these issues. Also, there was always this glorification of civilization in Sri Lanka. There is a constant glorification of our past civilization. That's all right, but it's my thinking that arose because that civilization was under threat and attack during the colonial period. That we really didn't have civilization. We brought the civilization here. But at the same time that you have this glorification of the civilization, there is not an attempt, a serious attempt, to actually make that civilization work for you. Whether it be mud construction or using traditional methods of irrigation or so on. So there is a constant displacement of people who have traditional knowledge going on. So that you cannot but be conscious of that if you are alive to this. And then also, the kind of accreditation we were doing, even the British universities have moved on from what we had in the 1960s. So we still have, you have seen a little bit about how there is compartmentalization of learning. So the accreditation by the institution of engineers in Britain is the one that matters. So I would say that I actually found it. A lot of the students actually, the students who come into engineering don't really have the sort of. How I would say I was different was I was reading about, and they actually come and sense a problem. They come to the university and they sense a problem. They rebel. They don't care about attending classes. They look at it as a way of a means to getting a degree. That's it. But at the same time they are politically conscious, very conscious, but they will not marry the two. They cannot say knowledge as a weapon for political ends. And it can be, for me, I always thought it's a very powerful weapon for political ends. Even in engineering, you could have revolutionary ways of modes of thinking and propagating that. And they were they wouldn't read the material. I mean, you have to read the mainstream. You have to understand the dominant dogmas, and you have to understand. I mean, if you're dealing with stripping these things, you have to read and understand what these things are about. But at the same time, do the hard work for everything else. So that's the sort of setting, and people are responsive, but selectively responsive. They're happy that you do it, but it's sort of like, okay, well, I mean, I did some work on ancient irrigation works and how those evolved. I tried to, how those evolved over time. I mean, you have like 20,000 village tanks in Sri Lanka. You have a network of maybe about 100 reservoirs. They happened at different times, right? So the question is this optimal? Is this the way it's organized is optimal? And if so, how was that knowledge transmitted or from generation to generation to generation, right? That work has not been done. I mean, there's a lot of material that is at work, archaeology, all of that, right? So what I found was that there's a responsiveness. So people want this done, but we don't have the cadre of technically trained people to do this, because they somehow began to look at, responded as if this whole thing is an alien experience. It's not something that we can internalize.